Hey guys, and welcome to the Fish Room. I'm Rachel O'Leary, and it's been a minute since I've said that. We're down here today because I asked you guys on my Instagram if you would like to hear sort of the process over the past couple years that's gone into fixing up my Penjing. Now, if you're new here, about 2.5 years ago, I had a Penjing installed in my fish room, and if you don't know what a Penjing is, you're not alone. It is basically sort of like a bonsai, but it's meant to mimic a larger slice of nature, in this instance, a mountainside. And I was very excited about this project. The concept is like perfect for me. You guys know now that I am a complete nature girl, constantly out exploring, and having something like this in my fish room just blew my mind. This piece was initially installed for me by Kevin Kelly, and he did a beautiful job. He did a great job installing it. I love the carving. But to say it's had some issues is a bit of an epic understatement. In August of 2019, I had an open house here for a couple of different aquarium clubs, and Kevin came and did the live install. The piece is made out of featherstone, which is an inert lava-like rock that he carved. It has a central dowel installed that goes to a plate underneath it that is plaster welded in order to provide the support for this piece so that it is completely stable. It was then packed with long fiber sphagnum moss as well as UNS contra soil, and it is lit by a Titan 1 light, which is really cool. And again, the tank is a UNS 60S. Kevin was sponsored for this install by UNS, so most of the products used on it were that. He then planted it with Monte Carlo mini hairgrass as well as some mini Christmas moss, and set up the filter, and everything looked pretty good. It had a lot of growing to do, obviously, but at first it looked pretty good. There were supposed to be these ficus put on it to mimic that mountainside and the trees, but they had inexplicably gotten lost inside the chair I'm sitting in right now, like up underneath. We have no idea how it happened, but I found them like a week later and then added them to it. I was doing pretty frequent water changes on this just because it was a new setup and there were some clarity issues with the water, but the featherstone is pretty cool in that it acts like a giant filter, being as it's basically a pumice stone. So it cleared up quick and everything looked really good. And that for a couple weeks, and then it started having new tank issues. It got a ton of fungus. There was fungus everywhere. There were cyanobacteria, big sheets of that blue-green algae all over the rock. There was algae in the water portion. I was having to spend hours each week cleaning it and maintaining it. I tried adding additional plants onto the mountain part, mainly Anubias. And it was just absolutely a nightmare to maintain. Once I felt like I had it relatively stable, in about December, end of December, I added some Thai microcrabs, Limnopilus niametri, one of my favorite little critters, and I thought they would particularly enjoy this setup because they like to cling to things, and the porous stone seemed to be perfect for them. However, within a few months, they had completely disappeared. The plants were all dying. The algae and the fungus was out of control. And again, I was having to spend hours and hours each week cleaning this out. So I decided to do something drastic. I went into the scape and I pulled out all of the sphagnum that I could find, poking my fingers into all the crevices and grooves of this big Penjing to try and remove that, because the only thing I could think of is that too many dissolved organics were just being trapped on the rock, feeding all of these other issues. I also added some springtails to the surface of the rock to try and eat some of that fungus and hopefully preserve some of the plants. By this time, all of the Monte Carlo had died, all of the hairgrass had died, and only some of the moss was really surviving. My Anubias were disappearing, but the ficus salicifolia, or the trees we had put on the side, were looking okay. I think one of the main problems is that because of the soil and the sphagnum packed into those grooves, it was changing the way that the water could flow across the stone, and it was basically just going down one main channel and into the aquarium. So it really wasn't benefiting from all of the properties of this stone as a filtration media. So by taking out a lot of the sphagnum in the soil, I not only removed a lot of the organics that were in there, but I allowed it to flow more evenly across the stone. I then added some ferns that I collected when I was down in Florida visiting that all-woman fish farm, as well as some random various mosses that I had pulled from the tops of filters in my fish room. If you're new here, like at one point I had 65 tanks running down here, and there were always cool plants growing everywhere, so I just stuck some on there to see what would happen. And in time now, it's been over 2 years, it's looking not so bad. That being said, it is still quite a lot of work to maintain this aquarium. Each week I have to flush the stone, clean the filter, and do a water change. Also, because the flow can be inconsistent across the stone, sometimes the water, if I have the filter turned up too much, it splashes out of the tank or onto the outside of glass, causing tons of water spots, which are a pain in the butt to remove. Or it's too low and then plants start to dry out. So I really have to keep an eye on this one. That being said, I'm pretty happy with how it is right now. But I thought today we would bust out my nerd kit and take a look and see if we can figure out why livestock just won't survive. I've tried shrimp, I've tried Endler's live bearers, I've tried the crabs, I even put a snail in there, and literally everything has died, and I just can't figure out why. It's super filtered, it's maintained really well. The featherstone is inert, the gravel in the substrate is inert. I really can't think of anything that would be killing these things. I also have my TDS pen and a copper kit, and I just thought we'd see what the readings are and go from there. So let's take a look. So as you can see, it's really not looking that bad right now, but I thought that today we would test the TDS. Now this TDS measures like everything in the water, so it's not always the best gauge, but I find that it's a pretty good gauge. Normally my tap water has a TDS of about 85 to 95, and as I'm looking at this right here, it's at 204, which, having just done a water change on this today, that's surprisingly high for not having added anything, not having any substrate that gives any nutrients. So all of that's got to be coming from this rock somehow. So that actually, I mean, that's not terrible. $208, but that's really kind of surprising. I'm actually a bit shocked by that. I'm going to go ahead and take a water sample for my copper kit. Now API makes a lot of good liquid test kits. So let's set that up, do my copper test, and see what we get. This is a sample of my tap water that I just took, and I just wanted to show you guys what it is out of tap, the TDS, which today is 107. It's been kind of dry here, so it's a little bit higher than normal. Again, I have well water, but that's still half what's in that aquarium that has no additives, so I'm still not entirely sure what's going on here. I have my copper test, where you take the reagent, you add 10 drops, and the reason I'm testing copper is because it's one of the things that can cause you to have issue with invertebrates. I've never had copper in my water. That tank has never had any medications used in it, so I'm expecting it to read nothing, but I just wanted to check. You just mix that back and forth and then let it sit for a minute. So, as you can see on the copper test kit, clear is 0. You hold it up to it, and to me it appears to be totally clear and white, so no copper, so that's good. So despite all the trials and tribulations I've had with this thing, it really has turned out to be a stunning and certainly a very, very unique piece. I've been tempted to do some redesign on the shape of it, but as it's grown in, I have to admit, it really is quite beautiful. And I'm happy to have it in my fish room. In fact, it is my partner or boyfriend or whatever you want to call him's, one of his favorite pieces down here. So that's part of the reason I've continued to maintain it and try and struggle to make it really successful. And I feel like over 2 years later, it's really finally getting there. It's got a lot of dimension. I know that these ferns are just going to go bonkers over time, so I'll have to pull some out. If you guys have any suggestions for plants that you think may work on this, let me know. I have a feeling I'm going to end up pulling these ficuses at some point. They're just not very happy on this thing, and I think the ferns look better anyway. But anyhow, I hope you guys have enjoyed sort of hearing about the struggle of this piece. It's really been a test of perseverance. Again, I'm really happy to still have it. It has certainly not been easy, but it just goes to show you that if you give yourself time, with a lot of plants, whether they're aquatic or emergent like these, a lot of times in time they will resolve if you can just be patient and continue to troubleshoot. And again, I go in each week and I just sort of poke at the bottom of all the trees and where the grooves are, and I knock little notches into the moss in order to allow the water to flow to all the sections. And so far that seemed to work out pretty well for this thing to get to this sort of balance that it has now. As always, thank you guys for your continued support. I hope you've enjoyed seeing sort of the evolution of the Penjing. Again, it is really gorgeous, but it's been a massive pain in my butt, but I'm still happy to have it. As always, thanks for your continued support, and I'll see you in the next video.